All right, hey VC, I'm Jamie. Welcome back. We're back with another video and back with vinyl finds for the new year. I think it's been at least a few months since my last vinyl finds video, so I've got lots of records to get to, so let's get right to it off the top. I don't know if anybody in the VC has shown this or talked about this, the latest Pink Floyd single, Hey Hey Rise Up. So we know all about this single. It finally got issued on both the 7-inch and CD format. Hey Hey Rise Up, of course, featuring from Pink Floyd, David Gilmour and Nick Mason. And then the B-side is A Great Day for Freedom 2022, and that's taken from the Division Bell. I don't know if there's a huge difference between this version and the version from Division Bell because it's all the same players. But yeah, so this is the CD version. Again, all proceeds to Ukraine, humanitarian relief. And very cool label on the CD. And then we have the 7-inch 45. You can see that there. And it's interesting that they kind of went with the wall style lettering for Pink Floyd here. And like that. Okay, so let's get to the full-length albums. This was kind of a grail find, an OG copy of Grateful Dead's In the Dark, of course, featuring Touch of Grey, Black Muddy Water. What a great album, and was thrilled to pick this up because I don't see this too often. Original gatefold with the original inner sleeve too. Okay, let's change gears to late 70s, early 80s, kind of some new wave sound for The Brains. And this is Electronic Eden, produced by Steve Lillywhite. Okay, and this also has included in the album a concert listing for Canada, where the band was going to be touring in through Canada. If I can get it out here, it's just wedged right in here. Okay, there we go. So it's almost like a press release that's included with this, including some dates in Canada, including Toronto, London, Ontario at Fry Fogels, Montreal, and Ottawa at the Beacon Arms. So that's kind of cool. All right, here's a very accessible jazz artist. Had some songs on the pop charts on the Cadet label, Ramsey Lewis. So this is a live Ramsey Lewis trio album, and this is the Groover Ramsey Lewis. Of course, you know, it's lots of covers, lots of sort of jazzy interpretations, but usually can find Ramsey Lewis albums pretty inexpensively, and pretty happy to pick those up. Okay, Eric Burdon of Eric Burdon and War and Eric Burdon and the Animals. Of course, here's a solo album I didn't even know existed with the cool cutting here for the die cut, if you will, for the jacket of the sleeve. This is the Eric Burdon Band and Stomp, as you can see. And he's rocking pretty hard on this. I was pretty happy to pick this up, and on Capitol. And very interesting. It's opens up like that, and then you have Eric Burdon in there on the sleeve, and then even the sleeve is cut like that. So that was a pleasant surprise coming across that one. Okay, we've got some Eric Clapton records for you in terms of course, we got Derek and the Dominoes with In Concert, the double live album. And this is the only one, so I picked this up with this sleeve intact, and this is actually all one piece for a double album. It's not split in the middle here, so I thought that was interesting. Really happy to pick that one up. We've got The Blues World. Now, this is kind of a series that was put out, The Blues World, or The World of, featuring a number of different artists, and The Blues World of Eric Clapton. Now, if you're an Eric Clapton fan, if you're a hardcore Eric Clapton fan, you'll definitely want to pick this up. But if you're just a casual fan, so this is Eric Clapton guesting on a lot of bands, like, of course, with John Mayall's Blues Breakers, also Champion Jack Dupree, and Elvis Span. So it's Eric, not necessarily featured on here, but playing throughout it. So there you go. This was an unusual find. This is called Full Cream, and I don't know if this is like a budget kind of thing going on. This is a 1970 UK pressing, and on 99, I don't know if that was a budget label, but this is essentially just a repackaging of the first album, Fresh Cream, as you can see by the track listings there, although also on Polydor, but it was, you know, nice to pick that up. And from Cream, we go to Jack Bruce and his first solo album, Songs for a Tailor. Great album, produced by Felix Pappalardi, featuring words by Pete Brown. Great album. Okay, we'll switch gears once again and go with Joan Baez. This is Hits, Greatest, and Others, and featuring The Night They Drove Old Dixie Down, this on Vanguard. And then we Switch to some Motown, Martha and the Vandellas live. Yeah, didn't even know this album existed. And these are always kind of fun albums to listen to. And it's usually live in some sort of, lounge setting, that sort of thing. And this is live at the 20 Grand in Detroit, Michigan. Okay, picked this up at my local Value Village. I didn't know anything about this. This is the Jonah Jones Quartet Swinging Around the World, and it's definitely kind of a foot in, still in the whole swing world of jazz, but very nice to listen to. Okay, one Guess Who record I didn't have is the Guess Who Volume 2. And so this features, Broken, Albert Flasher, Rain Dance, Sour Sweet, Life in the Bloodstream, Heartbroken Bopper, Running Back to Saskatoon, Follow Your Daughter Home, Glamour Boy. Just tons more of the great Guess Who hits. And this one, because these also got reissued later as just single jackets, but this was a gatefold initially. So happy to have that. Okay, and we go with some more Curved Air. We've got Curved Air and Air Conditioning, and then we've got Curved Air and Phantasmagoria, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Some more great folk rock from the UK. Thrilled to come across Steely Dan's Greatest Hits, and of course the nice Canadian labeling there is 2 records or 2 discs. It features just about everything you need from Steely Dan, and a nice gatefold on this one. There you go. Here's a record I didn't have. I thought I did, but Emerson, Lake and Powell. And this is a terrific record. So this was Emerson, Lake and Palmer were supposed to be reuniting. Palmer was not available. I think he had commitments with Asia at this time, so they went with Cozy Powell on drums. But this is terrific. It's really good in terms of the whole Emerson, Lake and Palmer kind of sound, without going too over the top in terms of 80s production. And yeah, really enjoyed that album. Okay, we lost Kim Simmons of Savoy Brown, and for whatever reason, I was always never able to come across any Savoy Brown records. Suddenly, I have been able to. So we've got Looking In with this amazing cover. So we've got Looking In. We've also got what have we got here? We've got A Step Further. And we get, the great blues rock sound of this band. We've got Savoy Brown's Skin and Bone. And then we've got Savoy Brown and Jack the Toad. I was going to say King of the Road, but Jack the Toad. An amazing artwork on these records. And another artist I was never able to come across, but suddenly coming across some Peter Hammill records. We've got Peter Hammill. And the title of this one is PH7, so the 7th record. And we've got The Future Now. And on Charisma. And really loving Peter Hammill, his solo stuff. I hadn't been exposed to it previously, but what a prog rock ride. Well worth checking out for sure. Okay, just a kind of a nifty compilation. This one on the Immediate label, and this is an anthology of British blues. So we got John Mayall, Eric Clapton's Stones Masonry, Savoy Brown Blues Band, Joanne Kelly, and T.S. McPhee. And that's what's featured on that one. So that is pretty cool. A Richard Thompson album that I was not familiar with. Quite the cover. Richard Thompson and Amnesia. And this one on Capital EMI from the late 80s. So always happy to pick up any Richard Thompson albums. Classic. Elvis Costello, King of America. All right, and now here's kind of an obscure band. This is a Sweet Thursday, and this band features Nicky Hopkins, of course, who played with so many, fabulous musicians, fabulous bands over the years. And this one has kind of it's got, if you like psych, you'll enjoy it. If you like kind of folk psych or folk rock, you'll enjoy it. And unfortunately, it's got quite a nick on the cover here. But and I don't know, there's something kind of, I do like the cover. It's very simple, but effective. Unfortunately, it's got some nice ring wear and, as I say, a nick in the corner there. But this was a very pleasant surprise to pick this one up. So yeah, look for a Sweet Thursday. I think they only released like a couple of albums. Okay, a Donovan album I was not familiar with. This is on Hickory Records, The Real Donovan. I'm assuming this is some sort of budget release, but always enjoy Donovan. That's what's available on that one. And speaking of an album I didn't even know existed, I didn't know War, the band, did a soundtrack. So this is the soundtrack to Youngblood. And I have never seen the film, but certainly enjoyed the soundtrack. And this one was still in the shrink, as you can see. Okay, a couple of Creedence Clearwater Revival albums. Finally have a copy of the first record, Creedence Clearwater Revival. As you can see, this is a slightly later issue because it's got the includes a Susie Q thing right on here. But we all know this album, great. And an album I don't often see is this particular live album, Creedence Clearwater Revival, live in Europe. And it's just basically a concert tour of Europe, so you don't get really any details, but it's got a great, it's a great song listing, and the recording is okay, for live albums, but this is when they were finally down to a trio. But yeah, enjoyed that. And of course, I'll definitely have to pick up a copy of the live at the Royal Albert Hall. Enjoyed the documentary. And yeah, I'll have to pick up a copy of that. And yeah, Country Joe and the Fish, greatest hits. I knew there was some sort of best of or greatest hits, but I didn't know it was available like with this kind of wild cover and the boys on the back. But this has got, the Fish cheer. It's got pretty much everything you need in terms of early Country Joe and the Fish. Okay, the sort of Leonard Skinner offshoot to 38 Special, first album, Wild Eyed Southern Boys. What a great opening track, that Hold On Loosely. The opening track, Hold On Loosely. So good, great Southern rock. I've seen this album shown many times on the VC, and that's the advantage of when folks are talking about albums that you're not familiar with, and then when you see it, it's like, okay, I'll have to be on the lookout for that. So this is the Youngbloods, and this is the album Elephant Mountain, and with Jesse Colin Young. Great album, absolutely outstanding. So if you enjoy the Youngbloods, and this is like 1969 on RCA, well worth picking up for sure. And speaking of which, another Jesse Colin Young album, and this is called Love on the Wing. I just like the sound of Jesse Colin Young. He's just got a nice kind of that folk country rock sound. And speaking of a band that I've really enjoyed, is the band Badfinger. Was thrilled to come across a copy of Magic Christian Music by Badfinger. Now this features songs, the Badfinger songs from the movie, and then it features a bunch of songs from their first album on here. So this is all Badfinger, so there's no sort of movie soundtracky kind of stuff, but this on Apple. And this also includes, it's got Maybe Tomorrow, that was from their first album, and then of course it features on here Come and Get It. Just terrific. Absolutely terrific. And of course the classic Badfinger album, No Dice. And this features No Matter What and Without You. Okay, here's a Van Morrison album that for some reason I was not familiar with, was off the radar for me, never really seen this one. This is Van Morrison, A Period of Transition. And it's, what can you say? It's another great Van Morrison album. This features Mac Rebennack, of course, better known as Dr. John on this one. And this one's still in the shrink, so happy to get that one. Okay, this is a later issue of a classic album, and it's the downside when they have gatefolds down to single sleeves, is that sometimes things get sacrificed. So, of course, on the original gatefold of Jailbreak from Thin Lizzy, you get the nice kind of comic book kind of artwork here where it opens up like the TV screen, but then when they issue it as a single sleeve, you get the very boring television screen. You'd think they could have done something to, I don't know, but again, what an album. I mean, we all know this album, Jailbreak, The Boys Are Back in Town, and one of my favorites, Cowboy Song, featured on here as well. So good. And on Vertigo, but later issue of that one. Okay, this was kind of almost a blind buy, but this is the Carolyn Hester Coalition. Interesting. And if you, it's got really kind of a psych folk thing going on with this one. Don't know a lot about this trio. Carolyn Hester. But yeah, happy to pick this one up. Very cool. Yeah, if you like that's kind of, again, that psych folk thing, you'll be definitely into it. A forgettable Peter Frampton album. This is the album called Lying, or sorry, the single from this was Lying, but the album is called Premonition. And this is actually, I can show you here. This is actually a promo copy, but this was out in the late 80s. It's okay. Yeah, there you go. How many Johnny Rivers live at the Whiskey A Go Go albums are there? I didn't even know about this one. There has to be at least half a dozen. And so this is Johnny Rivers, meanwhile back at the Whiskey A Go Go. And so when you got a good thing, keep it rolling. But this one does feature Seventh Son, which was a big hit for Johnny Rivers. And picked this up at my local thrift store, Value Village. Okay, an absolute classic, Al Green. And I'm Still in Love with You. Fantastic. Fantastic. Okay, here's a Greg Allman album I was not familiar with. This is the Greg Allman Tour. And so this is a double live album that also features a 24-piece orchestra and working with the band Cowboy, Boyer, and Talton. You know, fantastic musicianship and so good. So good. So this is it's a double live gatefold. So let's show you the inside here. And the jacket, maybe not in the best condition, but the albums are fine, but so good. Okay, another Procol Harum album. This is Procol Harum's 9th with these autographs here. But always happy to pick up a Procol Harum album. Thrilled to pick up the Canadian band Flood. This is the album On. This was originally supposed to be called Cock On. And this features some great Flood tunes. Come On, Come On, which was a hit. Also, Yes, Cousin Mary, which was a big radio hit. I don't often see this album for whatever reason, but this is a nice gatefold on this. And then Greg Godovitz from the band here went on to form Gatto. Truly, I often say a really underrated band, but Flood and On. Okay, a classic Mamas and the Papas compilation. This is Farewell to the First Golden Era. This feature, it's got everything you want on here in terms of Mamas and the Papas tunes. And yeah, and it's interesting, Mamas and the Papas. I don't know, they had been so far out of the radar for so long, but I think there's getting kind of a renewed interest, certainly in terms of young record collectors, on the Mamas and the Papas, which is nice to see. Linden's Farn, Dingley Dell, and again, great folk rock from the UK. Always happy to pick that up. And we've also got a classic Delaney and Bonnie album, Home, on Stax Records. Wonderful. Okay, and then we switch gears to something like a Night Ranger. It's Night Ranger. It's, Sister Christian. Big hit. There you go. Okay, we've got some more to show you. We've got a reissue of Bob Dylan and the Band. Finally have this on vinyl. I think I had this on vinyl years ago, and it got lost in moves and transitions, but I really like this album. So this was initially on Geffen, and now it's been reissued through Columbia, but really, I think we all know this album, and just it's Bob Dylan. Really, it's some passionate singing, and the band sounds great. And so, yeah, happy to pick that up even as a reissue. Jimi Hendrix, post-Jimi Hendrix stuff, and this is, of course, a Jimi Hendrix, The Cry of Love. And this is a UK version on Trax record. There you go. Okay, and this is a used reissue, but finally have a copy of this album from Dr. John, The Night Tripper. So good on Atco, but this is like this is definitely like a reissue. But yeah, happy to finally pick that up. I've seen so many people show that on the VC, and it's just like it's eluded me for so long until now. Okay, interesting. This album seems to be getting some love all over again. The album, yes, a drama. This is the album that doesn't feature John Anderson, but it's a good record. And so this is I think it's like a 180 gram issue, but I picked this up used, but this is 180 gram. Audiophile vinyl, cut from the original analog tapes. We'll have to take their word for it. But yeah, happy to pick that up. Okay, we'll switch gears with Janis Ian, and this is Aftertones. I picked this up at my local thrift store, Value Village. The soft sounds of Janis Ian. And yeah, we lost Anita Pointer just recently. So this is the Pointer Sisters and Black and White. This is also a sort of a thrift store find. Here's kind of almost kind of a blind buy, but usually when I see anything on Vertigo, I'm going to pick it up. So this is actually a Scottish prog band called Beggars Opera and Waters of Change. Fantastic. Okay, I've seen this shown, I don't know how many times. Finally saw a copy in the shops. Had to pick it up. Of course, this is the classic Damned, and this is Damned, Damned, Damned on limited edition yellow vinyl. I mean, when you talk classic, you know, how classic is this? So this is on, as I said, yellow vinyl. But I don't know how many times I've seen this shown on the VC. Okay, back to the thrift store kind of finds. We've got to Vicky Carr, and For Once in My Life, recorded live at the Persian Room. Very enjoyable. Vicky Carr's terrific voice, a terrific singer in terms of that whole, you know, sort of crooner lounge kind of thing. But yeah, and that's on Liberty Records. Okay, here's, I don't know, an Easter egg. We've seen Rachel show this artist so many times. This is the first time I've actually ever seen I believe it's pronounced Hino, record in the thrift stores or, you know, charity shops. What can you say? I don't think I'll say anything more. Just show you all the fantastic. So this is around the world. Boy, in terms of the photography and artwork, I tell you, second to none. I think does that page move along here? Yeah, here we go. Sorry about this. It's a travel log, completely. Okay, so there you go. Okay, here's a Canadian band you might not be familiar with. This is the band Skylark, obviously their second album. This band featured David Foster, of course, producer extraordinaire, David Foster. And this features the big hit Wildflower, which is kind of a nice ballad kind of song. But yeah, Skylark. From the west coast, I believe, of Canada. But yeah, I don't often see a Skylark album, so it was fortunate to pick that up. Spandau Ballet and True. You got some classic 80s going on here with the song Gold, and of course the title track True. This was a thrift store find. This is Al Hibbler, of the Best of Al Hibbler. Very much in the old sort of crooner style. Can't really say it's R&B. It's a lot more of the sort of crooner style, but Unchained Melody. Before the Righteous Brothers, I believe Al Hibbler had a big hit with Unchained Melody. So this is the Best of Al Hibbler, a 2-record set. Okay, always happy to pick up any and all Marshall Tucker Band. There you have that. And another sort of interesting old school compilation. This is called The In Crowd Electronically Enhanced for Stereo, which is always electronically enhanced for stereo. I'd much prefer the mono versions, but an interesting track listing on this one. With Joe Tex too. Yeah, you got some nice R&B going on here, as well as like Jan and Dean and Bobby Goldsboro, but you got Ray Charles, Isley Brothers, Chuck Jackson, Joe Tex, not bad. Okay, I was just chatting with a friend of mine all about the Lost Leader albums, and this is on Warner, so these were albums that you actually sent away for, very reasonably priced at the time, and just with an amazing spotlight. These were pretty huge through the 70s. with just an amazing spotlight on the Warner artists at the time. And so this one, if you can see, it's got Randy Newman, Jackie Lomax, you got Paul Stuckey, T-Rex, and Fanny's featured on here, the Beach Boys, Ry Cooder. So it's really quite an eclectic mix a lot of times. And they had and each one was called something different. So this is Menu Hot Platters, and they had sort of a different theme for each one, but often they were quite eclectic. Okay, we've got Autograph. You know, we've seen this album a million times as Sign In Please. There you go. You got some great hair metal going there. And then we'll switch gears with Carole King, and this is Wraparound Joy. Another lovely Carole King album. Rick Springfield. This is the album Living in Oz. Human Touch, I think, was one of the hits from this one. I like that Rick Springfield sound. I know it's real pop rock, but yeah, I don't mind Rick Springfield. Okay, here's a Canadian artist you might not be familiar with, Michel Pagliaro. Michel Pagliaro had a French singer, a French-Canadian singer, but had a lot of hits on the radio, English hits. So this is an all-French album. But one of those really, I think, underrated artists, sang in both English and French, and really great kind of pop rock sound. Okay, always enjoy picking up any Louis Prima albums. So this is Louis Prima, of course, with Keely Smith, and this is Las Vegas style, or Las Vegas Prima style, recorded live at the Sarah Hotel. So good. Okay, a Charlie Rich album. This is Lonely Weekends. Lonely Weekend with Charlie Rich. And yeah, it's got, again, a lot of those kind of great early Sun Records ones. Okay, this was I've seen this at my local record store, Diamond Dogs, and I wasn't sure if I was going to pick this up, but I have seen this band talked about. A band for some reason I thought initially was Canadian, but they're not. They're from the States, and the band is The Fifth Estate. I guess maybe I was thinking about the Canadian television show, The Fifth Estate. But this really, if you like psych pop, this is definitely a band to check out. So this is definitely a Canadian pressing, but an OG copy of this band, Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead, which is interesting. So you think it's not necessarily a kid's album. I mean, it starts off with a kid's song. And it's interesting with some of these psych bands, how they kind of dabbled in like having sort of kids novelty songs, but then of course they had a lot of, you know, great kind of psych rock or garage band kind of sound. So I was pretty happy to pick this one up. And there you go. Here's a Booker T and the MGs best of I did not know existed. This is Booker T and the MGs greatest hits. Pretty straightforward, but on the Stax label. And it's got all the great Booker T stuff that you want. You know, it's interesting when it's all, you know, of course, their cover of Eleanor Rigby, their cover of Mrs. Robinson. But again, listening to this again, just love the tune Hip Hugger in terms of that is such a great, groovy song. Yeah. So this doesn't have green onions on it, though, interestingly enough. It's got Time is Tight. It's got just about everything, but it doesn't have green onions. Of all the songs, it doesn't have green onions on. Okay, we've got John Waite, and this is the album No Breaks. John Waite, formerly of the Babies, and of course this features the big hit, Missing You. That's on here. I believe it's on here. Yes, Missing You. Such a big radio hit. Okay, here's a couple of Foghat records. For whatever reason, this one has eluded me for so long. I've just never been able to come across a copy of it. And this is Fool for the City, a great record. And as you can see, even the cover, the jacket on this is not in the best of shape, but the album plays fine. And yeah, happy to pick that up. And we've got a promotional copy for this one. This is Foghat and In the Mood for Something Rude. There you go. Nice gold stamp promo on that one. Kind of a blind buy. This is okay. This is kind of reggae calypso kind of music. This is Boo and the True Tones, The Leaders. Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. As I say, it was kind of a blind buy there. And speaking of sort of another blind buy, I had seen this artist talked about. This is a Canadian artist called John Michael Green and Still the Innocent. And I'm still not sure what I think of this album. This album is kind of predominantly folk rock, but then it gets kind of Almost, it has psychedelic influences as well. I'm not sure I really like his vocals, but this album, if you go on Discogs, goes for a pretty good price. And I got this quite reasonably priced. It almost has really a kind of an indie, almost kind of a budget kind of look to it. And I'm not sure when this album came out. It screams sort of the 70s or maybe the early 80s, but I think this is the only album he released, John Michael Green, and Still the Innocent. But this is a sought-after record. Canadian artist, so it's fairly obscure. This was pretty much an indie release. So, yeah, I'm going to have to listen to this one a couple more times, but it does kind of, there's a lot going on, like a lot of different influences on this one. It's not quite like it looks. Okay, I've seen this one shown so many times. Finally picked up a copy of John Anderson's first album, and this, you know, what can you say? Absolutely terrific. And this is a nice OG copied with the textured cover. Fantastic artwork. Like, how amazing is that? All right, so there you go. We got a couple of Seals and Crofts records. We've got Seals and Crofts and Down Home. And we've got a Seals and Crofts, a best of that I was not familiar with. This is Seals and Crofts collection. This is on K-tel, but it's actually also a Warner special products release, which I didn't know K-tel and Warner ever sort of collaborated on release. So this one has Get Closer, which is not found on the traditional Seals and Crofts greatest hits. So this has Get Closer and then pretty much everything you need from Seals and Crofts. Okay, here's a sentimental buy. This is Cliff Richard and the Shadows from Summer Holiday, the movie. And as I've mentioned, this is on the Capital 6000 series, which was a Canadian series with the idea of bringing international artists and also Canadian artists and sort of featuring them on sort of a specialty series. You know, the Shadows sounding great. This does have a lot of ba-ba-ba-ba kind of movie soundtrack stuff, but, you know, Cliff Richard still comes through in terms of great vocals. I mean, Summer Holiday is a fun song, and then the Shadows still coming through with their sound as well. So that was nice to find that. Okay, this is a Live Heart album that I'd seen over the years, but never really had the chance to enjoy. This is a double album, not gatefold, but, you know, Live Heart stuff, which is great. Yep, great. And we've got a couple of John Derringer albums that I didn't have. We've got John Derringer Live, which features, of course, you'll be shocked to hear that it features Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo. And then here's a Rick Derringer album that I was not familiar with. This is Rick Derringer with Dick Glass, Rick Derringer and the McCoys, and Glass Derringer, kind of a one-off project. And I don't have a lot of information. Tried to find out information about Dick Glass, and there's not a lot that's available, but decent record. Okay, we've got a solo album from Felix Cavalier. And, of course, Felix Cavalier from The Rascals, and I was able to pick this one up. I think I'd seen a few people on the VC talk about this one, and this is The Rascals and C. And this is a late 60s album where they were trying to get a little bit more, you know, of the times in terms of, you know, the music of the times, you know, with, you know, psych influences and things like that, or, you know, more rockin', but really good album. Still has their kind of pop sensibility, but a very good record. Here's a blind buy at a local thrift store, The Bliss Band. Interesting cover, lots going on there. The Bliss Band, this was produced by Jeff Baxter of both Steely Dan and Doobie Brothers. And so if you like Steely Dan, this is, I would say this is kind of Steely Dan light. You should be able to find this album pretty inexpensively, but I like the whole sort of diner theme that's going on here. But yeah, it's good. It's definitely worth picking up. Okay, Canadian artist Dan Hill. We had the big hit Sometimes When We Touch. This is his first solo album. So enjoyed getting that. Always enjoy picking up any and all Joan Armatrading records. And this is like an EP of Joan Armatrading. And then we've got Joan Armatrading Show Some Emotion. Okay. Great UK singer there. And we've got a thrift store find of Peter and Gordon and Woman on Capitol. Terrific. Absolutely terrific. Great 60s British invasion pop sounds. Okay, and we'll Fast forward to the 80s with John Oates and Daryl Hall, although usually it's Hall and Oates. I don't know why I said Oates' name first, but there you go. And of course the album H2O. Okay, I've seen this one shown. I was happy to get a copy of The Lovin' Spoonful and Do You Believe in Magic? And of course it features the title track and the great 60s sounds of John Sebastian and The Lovin' Spoonful. In decent condition too. Okay, I'd had this album before. Didn't have had a terrible copy of it, and happy to get to Joe Jackson's live album. This is a 3-sided live album. The fourth side isn't even an etching or anything like that, but Joe Jackson, and this is really well recorded, where the audience is pretty much not part of the picture. It's recorded with an audience, but you don't really hear the audience, so all the miking is really concentrated on the band, but it results in a really good live Joe Jackson recording. Surprisingly, a John Cougar Mellencamp album I didn't have in my collection. This is John Cougar Mellencamp and it features, Crumbling Down, Pink Houses, when John Mellencamp was just his star was rising. Happy to come across this one. This is Tracey Ullman and You Broke My Heart in 17 Places. Now, Tracey Ullman is definitely much more of a comedic actor than a singer, but having said that, I really like her version of They Don't Know, and I just think that is it's a real kind of Phil Spector almost style produced song. I think she does an amazing job with that. Of course, Christy McCall, that's her song. Christy McCall also recorded it, and later Tracey Ullman recorded another Christy McCall song, Terry, and I love Christy McCall. Absolutely terrific artist. But having said that, I really do enjoy this album. This is it's fun. It's a lot of fun. I didn't know she did a cover of Bobby's Girl on there as well. But if you like that real girl group 60s kind of Phil Spector sound, worth picking up. Okay. Soundtrack to the movie Roadie. I remember when the movie came out, I never got a chance to see it. Meatloaf featured in the film. This features a lot of, this is kind of the typical, songs of the day or songs of the era included. But, you got some Pat Benatar, you got Alice Cooper, you got Blondie, Roy Orbison, and not Pat Benatar, but is it Blondie on here that does a version of Ring of Fire, the Johnny Cash song, and that song initially was only available on this soundtrack. Okay, how about some great Gene Vincent and Greatest, and this is, I think, another reissue. This album is an abridged version of an album previously issued under the same title, so I'm sure there's either some tracks left off or something like that. But picked this up pretty inexpensively. At least it's got Beat Bopalula. That's all you need. Okay, this is kind of another blind buy. This is the band Coliseum, and The Grass is Greener, kind of a jazz rock thing going on the Dunhill label, but very much enjoyed. Okay, this was not a blind buy. I couldn't believe I saw this in the shops and said, yes, please. This is a 1970 UK pressing of Stone the Crows. Stone the Crows, not familiar with this band. They are sort of like a blues rock outfit, although they do get kind of proggy on the side too. The executive producer is Peter Grant from Led Zeppelin. This features Maggie Bell on vocals. They had two vocalists, but Maggie Bell, who has a total Janis Joplin thing going on. So Glenn Kellaway, who's a Janis Joplin fan. Glenn, if you can find some Stone the Crows, pick it up. You will enjoy. What an album. And they do a really wild cover of Fool on the Hill on this as well. Yeah, so there's the track listings there. Stone the Crows. I couldn't believe my luck finding that. And well, speaking of Janis Joplin, picked up a copy of Janis Joplin's Farewell Song. So this was an OG copy, with the original nice price sticker, and that is a nice size hype sticker, so still in the shrink. Country Joe McDonald does the liner notes. His liner notes are a little heavy-handed, shall we say. He's obviously clearly a fan of Big Brother and the holding company with Janis Joplin, and doesn't apparently like the other bands, so, which for me, John Till, as part of the Full Tilt Boogie Band. I mean, I think Janis Joplin did some great stuff with both Full Tilt and the Cosmic Blues Band, but he's Big Brother and the Holding Company only. But so this features a lot of live tracks. This is a post Janis Joplin posthumous release, so you got stuff from the Festival Express, and it's not a very long album, but some really nice stuff on here. Okay, now here, if you want to take a wild trip, pick this album up, The Nice and Five Bridges. This was like a commissioned album, I think, talking about the bridges of Newcastle at the time. And this is, of course, with Keith Emerson for joining up with Emerson, Lake and Palmer. But, it's symphonic, but it's heavy, heavy prog at times. It is an absolutely wild ride. And I think it was on Mojo Magazine's 40 Cosmic Albums that this one's included. At first, you're putting it on and thinking it's just going to be a straightforward symphonic record, but great to cover here with Hipgnosis. Love that. But this is a wild ride. Okay, we got some more live stuff. I wasn't familiar with this one, but when I saw this live, Hotels, Motels, and Road Shows. So this is on the Capricorn Records label, so it's featuring bands like Stillwater, which is great because I don't have any Stillwater. So there's a couple of live tracks from Stillwater. You've got Chuck Leavell's Sea Level featured on here, Dixie Dregs, Marshall Tucker Band, Bonnie Bramlett. You've also got Grinder Switch, Allman Brothers Band, Greg Allman, Richard Bett or Dickie Betts, and Wet Willie live tracks, all featured on here. And I'll have to show you the cover because there's quite you can almost have 3D glasses with this one. Like, what? Wow, that is wild. But terrific double live album. Not, again, surprisingly, for these bands that play long stuff, it's not a surprisingly lengthy album, but good. All right, we've got just a few more if you're still with us. We've got some Marvin Gaye records, Marvin Gaye and Midnight Love. And I think it was Robert Fitton talking about this album, how sonically it's so good. And he's absolutely right. Sonically, this is a terrific album. Of course, Midnight Lady, Sexual Healing. Marvin Gaye's last studio album, Midnight Love, and this is Marvin Gaye and What's Going On Live on Tamla. I picked this up used. This might have been a Record Store Day release, but I'm not sure on that. And so this is it's a nice double live album that features, he starts it off with all of a medley of his 60s hits and then plays the What's Going On album in its entirety. This was initially available on the What's Going On Deluxe Edition double CD, so all of this live stuff was on that CD, which I do have, but really nice to have this on vinyl. Okay, and another killer live set. I've had this on CD as part of the Woodstock, one of the Woodstock Columbia sort of compilations, but this is Sly and the Family Stone live at Woodstock. This band was absolutely on fire for this performance, and amazing that they performed. They were supposed to perform in the evening, but I don't think they got on stage till like 2 or 3 a.m. But still put on just a over-the-top show. Over the top. Fantastic. So happy to pick that up. Classic ZZ Top, an album I didn't have in my collection, El Loco. Classic ZZ Top, an album I did not have in my collection until now, The Doors and Greatest Hits. I mean, what can you say? Still, a solid single album, Greatest Hits compilation. All right, a Harlequin album that, this is a Canadian band that I've enjoyed. I saw Harlequin perform at a local high school back when I was a kid, and, just a great rockin' Canadian band. They had the song Innocence, and they had a bunch of radio hits, but this is one of their last albums where, the hits just aren't coming, and, maybe kind of just running out of steam, but interesting, a promo copy. So this is Harlequin, and is it just called Harlequin, or does this actually have a title? It must have some sort of title, but there you go. So one of Harlequin's last studio albums. Maybe not the last, but one of the last. Finally, picked up a copy of The Jam in the City. Fantastic. Of course, and Paul Weller. We all know about The Jam, how great they were. And I've got lots of Jam on CD, but iconic cover, and I love the Batman theme. You're so good. But this, right from the word go, is fantastic. The Jam in the City. Okay, Oscar Peterson's got so many records, and I didn't know he did a soundtrack. This is Oscar Peterson, original score from The Silent Partner. Don't know a lot about the film. I believe it was a Canadian produced film that features Christopher Plummer, also Elliot Gould's in the movie, Susanna York. I don't know much about the film, but Oscar Peterson did the soundtrack. So very nice indeed. Okay, I seem to be coming across a lot of, I don't want to say bootleg, but budget Ike and Tina albums, and this is Ike and Tina Turner, Get It, Get It, and this is it on Pickwick, I believe? Previously released on Capitol Records, but yeah, yes, it is on Pickwick. But still, it's got great Ike and Tina Turner R&B stuff going on. Okay, here's... this is one of those, should I pick this up? Yeah, I'm picking this up. Okay, this is Go Get Yourself a College Girl movie soundtrack. I don't know anything about the film, but I think it's going to be a typical kind of 60s film, but a pretty good list for the soundtrack. You got the Animals, Dave Clark 5, the Standells, Stan Getz, not bad on MGM, and it's not a bad album. But Get Yourself a College Girl. Oh my gosh. Oh, some of these 60s movies. Picked this up at my local thrift store. I've never come across any Steve Forbett albums. Now the jacket's not in the best of shape with this little whatever's going on there. But another great Steve Forbett album, Little Stevie Orbit. Okay, and this artist who passed away recently, I believe, Robert Gordon, also picked this up at the same time. I don't often see Robert Gordon albums, but this is Rockabilly Boogie. Okay, so there's that. Picked this one up for free, or like for a donation. This was at a recent sort of like a Friends of the Library book sale in St. Mary's, Ontario, and I said, yes, I'll have to take this. This is Napoleon XIV, and they're coming to take me away. Not exactly politically correct, shall we say, these days, and a lot of novelty stuff and kind of silly stuff. When Warner was really, promoting a lot of comedy records like Alan Sherman, like Napoleon XIV. But yeah, they kind of ride this whole theme right through the whole record. But it's in great shape, so it was nice to pick up. Okay, solo album from Ian McLagan. McLagan, sorry, from Ian McLagan. I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly now. Of course, yes, keyboardist with the small faces, the face is fantastic, and a troublemaker. And some nice guest artists on this one. Including Ron Wood is featured on this one. You've got a great session man, Jim Keltner, also on here. Keith Richards, who plays guitar on here. Ringo Starr's also on drums, so quite the lineup. Stanley Clarke on bass. There you go. Ian, I won't say his name anymore. I don't know why I'm having such trouble with his last name. Leslie Gore, greatest hits, the golden hits of Leslie Gore. It's My Party, Sunshine, Lollipops, and Rainbows, all the sad, happy and sad songs from Leslie Gore, early 60s. She was huge back in the day, back in the early 60s with Teenage Angst, She's a Fool, You Don't Own Me. Oh. Okay, picked up a couple of Tom Jones records. Finally got a copy of Tom Jones, and this is Move Closer, and this features his amazing cover of the track Prince with Art of Noise on here. That does not set the template for the album. I found this album actually really disappointing. I was expecting a lot more with that song, and if it was going to be maybe either that sound or maybe big 80s kind of sound, there's way too many ballads on this one. I found this album disappointing. Even the cover of I Can't Get No Satisfaction doesn't really lift. He does a cover of Billy Vera's At This Moment. The album's really disappointing. If you like the song, just pick up the song and really don't bother with the album. Now, having said that, mid to late 70s, we got Tom Jones, and this is the album Rescue Me. This is another thrift store find. I took a chance on this one. He does that really, it's definitely disco, but he does a nice cover of Rescue Me, and I didn't know he did a cover of Burton Cummings and Never Had a Lady Before. Not bad. He also does a Don't Cry For Me Argentina, and again, sometimes with Tom Jones records, there's always an odd covers. But What Becomes of the Broken Hearted's not bad, but I was to say, in terms of these two records, this one's much better, although the disco on here does get a little bit much, and I like how it's called Rescue Me, but he doesn't look like he needs any rescuing. And wow, the inside, okay. Tom Jones. Okay, now let's switch gears with some great Canadian rock. Finally picked up a copy of Thundermug and Strikes. Thundermug was a great rockin' Canadian band. They do a cover of You Really Got Me, but their big song, radio song, was the song Africa, not to be confused with Toto's Africa, which came out 2 years later. But they had a really nice kind of driving bass sound, but Thundermug. And I think in the States, this was there's a different configuration to the compilation, or to this album in particular, almost like the Beatle releases, how they had different song listings for the Beatle albums. But this is the Canadian version on Axe Records, so happy to get that one. Okay, how about this classic Roy Orbison album? You know, Roy Orbison reviving his career. Sadly, he would pass away, but Roy Orbison and Mystery Girl still enjoy this album in terms of, you know, the songs. You Got It, which it was a great tune, and with Bono on She's a Mystery to Me. Nice album. Okay, an album, Bob Dylan's greatest hits. What can you say? It's a terrific album. But this one includes the original poster, which is becoming increasingly hard to find. Includes the original Milton Glaser poster. So, of course, got the record inside and the poster, which is, and it doesn't have any thumbtacks in it or anything. So I was happy to pick this up. Hopefully we can get this all into, there you go. So more than thrilled to pick that up for sure. Okay, this is another thrift store buy. I've only got a few more. This is Harry Belafonte live, and this is an interesting record because he has a lot of guest artists appearing on this one, so it's not all Harry Belafonte singing. Number of guest artists, and this is a good live album. If you're looking for something different from Harry Belafonte, I would recommend that one. Another great Canadian band, very much underrated, A Foot in Cold Water. And this is All Around Us. And this features the hit from A Foot in Cold Water. Does it feature? Yes, of course it does. Make Me Do Anything You Want. That song later covered by Helix. Kind of a nice ballad, but a huge radio hit. Make Me Do Anything You Want. Foot in Cold Water. And I think either they released this one or reissued this one for Record Store Day not too long ago, or another Foot in Cold Water, but this an original copy. And I think we've got just one more. If you're still with us, we'll end it off with the classic. Simon and Garfunkel, Paisley, Sage, Rosemary, and Thyme on Columbia. And I can't recall if this is I think this is a stereo version, but maybe not. Nope, yeah, the stereo version. Okay, so that's it. Thanks so much for dropping by. And again, thank you to all my subscribers. And thank you so much for anyone who's taken the time to watch the videos or leave a comment. Thanks so much. We'll chat again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.